Alrighty, today I want to look at a story that's been circulating quite heavily. Um, let's go here, bring up this. Okay, so this story has been going around quite a bit for the last week. It started off kind of slow. I think this was released on April 7th, so that was Tuesday, excuse me. The story was released on Tuesday by Page Six, which is the New York Times sort of like super tabloidy wing, or New York Times, New York Post. So already very tabloidy type paper, and this is like their specifically like tabloid section that like spies on celebrities and shit. And they came out with a story on Tuesday that New England Patriots Mike Vrabel and top New York Times NFL reporter Diana Russini hold hands and hug at luxury hotel. So, um, these two are obviously married to other people. They're not married to each other. They both have separate spouses. And Diana Russini, if you follow the NFL at all, you know like she's she's the senior NFL reporter at, and this says New York Times. It's actually The Athletic. I think they work together. Um, and she's the senior NFL insider there. So she's very prominent. And again, they're both married to different spouses. So obviously there's some salaciousness here, and you can see these photos. They are clearly interlocking fingers here, hugging. And this is a bigger photo of this one, which shows them hugging, and you can see they're at a very like sort of scenic place. This hotel out in, this sort of like this destination spot in Arizona. It's not like they both had to like drive out there basically, specifically because um it's not like they weren't there at least at this location for like some work purpose. They were in Arizona 2 hours away during the previous week or so to this, where they were working at like some hotel in Phoenix or something for an NFL function, right? Like probably off season something. And so this sort of suggests that apparently they like after that both drove out to meet out here. Um, and to have this little meeting, whatever, who knows actually what happened. Clearly they at least had hugged and interlocked fingers, and then also there's this photo of them sitting by the pool and in the hot tub, and there's her leaving the area, and then there's Vrabel leaving the area. So it's clearly them. There's no question about that. And indeed, um, so the New York Post, they made some attempts. They obviously contacted Vrabel and Russini, um, for comment, and they did give comment, and Vrabel said something, and now of course I'm trying to like scroll through this just to find the freaking quotes, and you never can. Okay, so here was Vrabel's comment, just to be clear. These photos show a completely innocent interaction, and any suggestion otherwise is laughable. This doesn't deserve any further response. Okay, so he's outright denying it, which is like, okay. And then Rossini, the photos don't represent the group of 6 people who were hanging out during the day. Like most journalists in the NFL, reporters interact with sources away from stadiums and other venues. So they're really trying to tamp this thing out right away. And anyway, I'll make a comment on that. But first, let's just break this down a little more. So these were the original statements, right? Also, Steven Ginsburg, executive editor of The Athletic, said these photos are misleading and lack essential context. They were public interactions in front of many people. Okay, so there is a clear narrative being established here. Group of 6 people who were hanging out during the day. There were public interactions in front of many people. Diana is a premier journalist covering the NFL. Okay, so they are sort of, The Athletic's coming out strongly and supporting this story that she's telling about a group of 6 people who were hanging out during the day. And they're really supporting her here, which is interesting. One thing I would note is that if you just look at these photos, there doesn't seem to be any um, other people present, right? Like now maybe they had snuck off together or whatever. Which, I mean, is there supposed to be 6 people lingering outside these photos that were 4 other people lingering outside these photos that were with them? It doesn't appear that way, right? Like you'd get one of them in there at one point. She's just leaving by herself despite being with 5 other people. It's like it just doesn't really add up. um, so where are the other people, right? That would be the question. And also, just to be clear, I mean, the story was dropped on April 7th, Tuesday. It's now Sunday the 12th, and they have not. None of the 4 other people have been identified or spoken to. So, the question obviously, the easy question obviously is, where are these 4 other people? Can't you just, couldn't Vrabel and Rossini just name them, and someone just confirms that, and then that would at least lend some credibility to their story. We haven't heard from any of them, which that now goes the other way and now casts doubt on their story, right? Because you would have just heard from them quickly. So the other thing about this, so more on this story, basically, this is how they initially responded with those 2 statements I just read, and also with the Athletics supporting Rossini, right? This was like Tuesday or Wednesday that they came out with these statements. Um, well, now, yesterday, after this story bubbled and bubbled, because what happened was ESPN did not report on this at all for 4 days, and I think they were just trying to give Diana the benefit of the doubt and just not, I guess, not dabble in salaciousness like prior to really knowing something. Well, they finally came out yesterday with an update. New York Times, well, this is actually their first, to my knowledge, their first posting or any sort of content about ESPN's first posting or any sort of content about this story. Like I said, they'd been pretty mum on it, which some people interpret it as a cover up, but I think they could justify it as just saying, like, we don't really, we're not TMZ, we're ESPN. So, if they're both denying it without like real hard proof of anything, it's not really, you can argue it's not really within their purview to report on stuff like that. And just to be clear, like, I don't really care what these people are doing, if they're philandering or whatever. It's not something I would recommend someone who's married doing. I think it's bad behavior, but it's not. I don't really view them drastically different for having done this. What I will say is, it does cast, some integrity issues or some doubt on Rossini's reporting, right? Um, which I'll talk about more here in a second. But first, I wanted to just show a couple clips here. So again, ESPN finally acknowledged yesterday that this story, and what they acknowledged is actually an interesting development. The Athletic is reinvestigating NFL reporter Diana Rossini's coverage and the nature of her relationship with New England Patriots coach Mike Vrabel, amid questions raised about the two this week. So basically, what happened was this story kept bubbling. People on the internet got to work and started, digging up clips of Diana saying, negative things about her husband, and which she's done oddly frequently, like on national television in joking ways, right? But she's made these weird comments that, like, you just wouldn't really expect someone to make. Things like, oh, I'm married to an average man, and then even more recently, like within the last year, she's been on a couple shows where she said things about, like, I'm gonna be divorced by the end of the year, like basically alluding to her marriage being on the rocks. Again, jokingly, and like the other people on the shows would sort of interpret it as a joke, but it's just odd. And then also you just look at her string of her reports about AJ Brown and just different things throughout her career. It's like you can easily tie it back to like having that information having come from Vrabel. Well, yesterday the Athletic, which again had on Tuesday been supportive of Diana, after the story sort of simmered throughout the week and people really started to run with it and connect the dots, yesterday The Athletic, again, this is according to ESPN, the Athletic is reinvestigating NFL reporter Diana Russini's coverage. So that's, to me, that's significant. That means that they're realizing this isn't going to go away. There's something here. I think also they're not dumb, right? They probably looked at the photos and just realized, like, Diana, like, where are these other people? Like, they don't want to be lied to, right? As much as they want to support her, they probably just said, like, look, we're not idiots. What are we doing here? Like, we can't just believe bullshit, right? It's going to affect their integrity, because it's just like, if you're purporting to be this sort of like upstanding journalism outlet, which the Athletic sort of pretends they are, at least, or maybe they really are. You know, it's up for your judgment. They try to do sports journalism. Um, well, if they're just acting as this propaganda wing for Diana Rossini, even though she's clearly done something wrong, that's not neutral journalism, right? Like, that's not very, that eats away at your integrity as a journalism outlet if that's how you're behaving. And I think someone in there realized, you know, this is going to kill us too. It's going to take us all down if we're not able to be honest about this. And again, there's no proof Diana and Vrabel did anything untoward at that place outside of the hand interlocking and the so anyways, that's where the story is now. She's been sort of suspended. She's not going to be reporting going for at least the time being while they investigate what's going on and look into the reports. So that's where the story's at now. So one thing I wanted to note, and we'll watch this clip of Shannon Sharpe.
Russini and Mike Vrabel. We better talk about that. Y'all better talk about Diana Russini and Mike Vrabel. We not. Man, we don't do the tabloid. What y'all want us to say?
Man, what happened?
Tell me what y'all want us to say. Nothing. You read about it tomorrow. I'm about to block everybody. Y'all mention Russini or Vrabel again.
Okay, so you'll see that clearly Shannon Sharpe he doesn't want to give into the tabloidy stuff, which is fine. But I think what you'll notice is a pattern amongst these TV pundits and commentators is that like Shannon Sharpe, I'm not saying this is definitely the reason, but like what I would surmise is that like he doesn't want to talk about this because he's been involved in a scandalous thing like this before, where he was like on Instagram, accidentally left his Instagram live running, and he was like with a woman, and I'm not sure if he's married, but you can just go look into the details of that yourself. But like he's been involved in sort of a scandalous story like this, not really like an integrity issue, I guess you could say, like this Diana Rossini thing, but like, or maybe you could, I don't know, you get to judge that on your own, but either way, he's been involved in a story like this before. So, you know, if you've been involved in something like this before, if you get critical about someone else, you know, you're inviting people to go back and dig up what you did and say, hey, how are you know what I'm saying? So you just notice a pattern that like if someone is just refusing to talk about it, you know, they might be saying like, oh, I don't do tabloid stuff, or like that's not, you know, I'm above that. And that's usually bullshit. Usually it means they've been involved in something like that themselves, and they have sympathy for it, maybe for one, and they just don't want to pile on because they feel badly. You know what it feels like, right? Anyone can identify with that. But you know, that's the ultimate reason they're not commenting. There, he's hesitant to comment on it. Anyways, so now this is the other way you'll see, like that I noticed, you know, people were sort of responding to it, and you got to understand, like, this is not just some random woman that people don't know so they feel comfortable saying things. Like, these are, even though Lebatard's never had a scandal like this himself, Diana Rossini is someone that comes on his show, and again, this is the Lebatard show. It's a show that used to be on ESPN that's now independent, but it's an awesome show. It's very funny. It's sports commentary. He's Dan's really smart. I hate when people say that. Oh, he's so smart. He has a unique way of looking at things, and unfortunately, a lot of times it tends to be like really sort of like super like far left, like woke-ish, super liberal stuff. But he's funny enough, and he's sort of like self-deprecating enough where it's not as intolerable as you see from other outlets. He's very predictably left when he expresses an opinion. It's not like a super annoying thing, but at least in this instance, he shows some cowardice, because Dan is usually one to sort of like seek truth and call people out for bad behavior. but he's good friends with Diana. She comes on his show weekly, which just shows you, the interconnectedness of all the sports media and why, you know, why honesty can be tough on some of these shows when they're talking about things like this, or just sports media stories in general. Stories about sports media, whether it be this a salacious story or just, anything. Um, they're all friends. They all have relationships. Obviously, they're all in the same industry, and so this was sort of the other type of response you get.
And so, yeah, she doesn't want to be at the center. Hey, and harder than all the other people that have to do this stuff of getting and fighting for the information, who don't have to deal with this shit. This would not happen to Shams. This would not happen to Woj. This would not happen to any of these people. And so, yeah, she doesn't want to be at the center of this. She doesn't want any part. This is not why she got into this business.
One note, when you say like the news people don't typically become the news, there is a head coach of a conference champion here that's involved that might be playing into why this is also new.
But this isn't a story if it was Mike Vrabel with some random woman that we don't know. It's about her, man.
It's
about
also,
women.
And it's also just gossip. It's also just gossip.
She's been gossiped about before. There's also like a weird New York Post athletic thing going on here too.
So
Okay, so you can hear how like their tendency is to want to defend her. And which is understandable, but I do think it is a bit cowardly, and ultimately at the end of the day, even though you can understand their intentions, this type of behavior, it erodes at the integrity of an industry, right? Because they aren't really addressing it honestly. Like, number one, as you can see, they have not shown the photos, right? Like, I feel like if you, regardless of like what side you're going to come down on, if you want to at least present some type of objective examination, or like you do have some neutrality, you would at least show the photos that everyone's reacting to, right? Just put them up on the screen, unless they just don't they have no rights to them or can't do that. But I think you would at least address the photos, right, and the content, which they don't do in this. They just kind of talk about, they're essentially talking around it, right? Why it makes them uncomfortable. And Zaslow, this guy, he even says at one point, like, she's a friend, and like I don't think anyone can blame anyone for supporting a friend or believing a friend. And that's an interesting point. And it sounds good, but the problem is she's a journalist, and you're so obviously the integrity of things she reports matters, right? And these guys, it's not like them giving their opinions, it's not, there's no consequence to it. But if they want to be taken seriously, right, and not like, they're not just like, a propaganda arm for sports, just like, and sports media just propping everyone up and never acknowledging bad behavior or the warts and sort of the negative aspects, well, that eats away at their credibility too, right? Like, at the end of the day. And the next time they want to criticize someone, it opens them up to criticism against themselves, of someone saying like, well, you want to levy this criticism against, this conservative woman that you don't like, but you wouldn't say anything when it comes to Diana Russini? What's that about, right? That's the problem. That's the problem with picking and choosing where you want to be critical and where you want to, like, honor honesty or whatever. Is that, when it comes down to your friends or someone that you're close with, are you able to, do you have the guts to do it as well, even though it's uncomfortable? And you're seeing that discomfort.
It's about
here.
her, man.
It's
about women.
And it's also just gossip. It's also just gossip.
She's been gossiped about.
It's gossip. It's just gossip, right? It's funny. It's like, the way I see this is this, like, there's this big tall metal wall that we're looking at, right? And over the wall, you're seeing these plumes of smoke rising into the air, and there's heat emanating from the wall that you can feel. And you say to your buddy next to you, like, hey, dude, I think there's a fire on the other side of this wall, because I'm seeing the smoke and I feel the heat. And your buddy's like, well, no, you don't know that. That's true. You don't have proof. Like, we don't, you can't make any assumptions. That's just gossip. No, we see the smoke and we feel the heat, brother. It's something going on the other side of that. Probably fire. There's very few other options. Like when you got someone interlocking fingers and, hugging, being by the pool. And then also on top of that, saying things that appear not to be true in these photos show a completely innocent interaction, and any suggestion otherwise is laughable. Well, how is two married people holding hands and hugging an innocent interaction? Like, making a suggestion that might not be an innocent interaction, it's not laughable. That's a completely normal conclusion that you could draw from seeing those photos. I'm not saying it proves anything, but it makes that suggestion. It's not laughable to suggest that those photos, you might look at them and say like, oh, this appears like these two people are like trying to get away with something here. Or like, you know what I mean? It feels like these two people are being maybe unfaithful to their spouse. You can see that. So, anyways, another thing I wanted to look at is, if we move on from the Le Batard reaction, is this one from Albert Breer. And this I thought was interesting, was the other insiders, the other NFL insiders getting questioned about things like this. They were very mum. They didn't want to say anything. Again, sort of like Shannon Sharpe, even though Shannon Sharpe is just telling you,
y'all better talk
that he doesn't want to talk about it. And it's more obvious why, right? Like, because he was involved in something like this. Well, Breer
You cover the
kind of
for kids.
here.
No, Mike.
Here's Zolak.
I'm definitely not so. But I've known Diana for a long time. I really like Diana. I honestly, like, I feel like there's a relatively small circle of us that really have an idea of what's happening in the league, and she's definitely in that circle of people that I would respect as somebody who has, like, is on the upper tier of national reporters. Honestly, like, I don't know what I have to add out other than what's already out there. I mean, like, I don't want to sit here and be all defensive and everything else because I know both people. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want this to turn into that where, like, if this was somebody in another sport, I would be all over it, making fun of it and everything else with you guys and laughing. You know what I mean? But the reality is, like, I know what, I know most of what you guys know at this point, which is that, like, yeah, like, I mean, Diana's had a relationship with Vrabel, a professional relationship with Vrabel, and, like, we all have these sorts of relationships, and I don't think you're doing the job right if you don't have, in a position like mine, a relationship with every head coach, and so.
Okay, so as you can see, like, you can hear he's very hesitant to say anything. He's hemming and hawing. He's hesitant to say anything too inflammatory, definitive. He doesn't want to give you too much of a peek behind the curtain. He's not going to say maybe what he's assuming, right? He wants to stick completely to a very professional, tailored set of words that's not going to get him in trouble in his own industry, right? And I think what this is sort of telling you is that, what he's kind of telling you is, I think what he's saying is they're all doing shit like this, right? Like, he doesn't want to be critical, because I'm not saying he's ever cheated on his wife or been at a hotel with a woman trying to get information away from his wife or whatever. I'm just saying he knows there's a sleazy side to this industry, and potentially he's even participated in it before, trying to get information, right? And so, it's tough to be critical of other people when this is your livelihood, and you know how how it goes, right? So I think that's why you're going to see from a lot of these insiders a reluctance to come down hard on Diana if this is indeed what she was doing, trading some type of intimacy for information from Mike Vrabel. You're not going to see, and he even said it himself, there's a small circle of these top NFL insiders, right? You're not going to see any of them come down on her in sort of a moralistic way. And the reason for that is they've all compromised themselves in one way or another. And this is just my opinion, but that's probably how you get to the top, right? How you actually get to that highest level is making some compromises along the way. It's just sort of like greases the wheels, right? To try to get to that level. So another thing I wanted to touch on with this was, there was a story about this that sort of like put an interesting little wrench in it. The Russini photos were shopped. Okay, let's take this. Okay, so there was a report that came out in the following days after the initial report, and it was sort of like one of those stories that like keeps the story alive, right? Like you have the initial story, there's a lot of hype around it, and then you need like other details to trickle out in order for the story to like grow and become this sort of like thing that's never gonna stop until we get the truth, or until like people feel satiated. And so this Yahoo Sports story, Mike Vrabel, Diana Rossini photos were shopped for 4 figures. Okay, so what that means is these photos that were taken were shopped. So for 4 figures, which means up to $9,999, which to me sounds really low, right? Like these are fairly explosive photos, and they were shopped for 4 figures. So number one, you start to think about like, okay, so who took these photos, right? It could have been someone that was there staying at the bungalows, or staying at this secluded hotel with them, right? 2, it could have been someone that was sent there to follow them or to spy on them, like a private investigator. And number 3, it could have been one of the hotel workers, right? People that work there. Let's address each of these 3 options. Number 1 is just a random person staying at the hotel, which that's obviously very possible. The only thing is, if you're just a random person staying at this hotel, if you're just a random person staying in this hotel and you happen upon getting these photos, like you realize who those people are, you realize the implications, you get your phone out, you somehow surreptitiously take these photos, you successfully do all that. This is like, if you're that person that does that, this has got to be a pretty rare occurrence where you've obtained something that you believe has some value. You're only asking for 4 figures, less than $10,000. That doesn't add up to me. 4 figures tells me that this is not just some random person, because they would ask for like 100K or something, which TMZ, Page 6 can easily give. These places have piles of money that they're willing to use to buy these stories. It's what keeps them alive, right? So to me, that rules out the idea that it could be like some random person staying at the hotel. The other one is the hotel worker. And why I would rule that out is simple. Is this particular hotel is a very privacy-oriented, upscale, elite hotel. And that's another detail of this that's interesting, is if you look at this hotel, it's called the Ambiente. These are all details that were available in this article from page 6 of the New York Post. Ambiente Sedona, a landscape hotel, right? So this hotel is meant for like private couples, or like 2 people to have a private getaway in a very nice little like cabin cabana bungalow, I guess. And what you get is you get views, right? It's a very romantic setting. I'm sure they have amenities there, maybe a restaurant, but with this a pool, you know. What's significant to me though is that like there's not really like all it appears to me at least, and so this is sort of appears to be the main build. If we look at this photo here, um, this sort of appears to be the main building, right? There's like some type of lounge, or maybe this is a gym and then a pool. Um, but and then you see what you'll see here is all these private bungalows, right? These are apparently two-person bungalows that you can rent, and it's like 2,500 a night, maybe like a little less. But what's interesting about that to me is if they're claiming there were 6 people there, well, so you had 3 different bungalows rented, which still doesn't make any sense because what they suggested was that the suggestion was made that Diana was there with 2 female friends, Vrabel was there with 2 of his coaching buddies. So Vrabel and 2 coaching buddies rented what, 1 bungalow for the 3 of them to have a private romantic getaway at a, like, look at this hotel. This isn't like the Marriott where you go, everyone has a room and you're hanging out in the buffet at the downstairs buffet and bar, over the course of a weekend. These are private bungalows, right? If you just look at this hotel and how it looks and how it's set up, it sort of changes things because you realize this is a very particular kind of hotel where it's like meant for private getaways. And even on their website, they do suggest that, like, we love to host honeymoons, baby moons, special birthdays, anniversaries. So it's like you're meant to go there and like have a romantic experience with your couple. So the idea that Vrabel went out there with 2 coaching buddies, Diana went out there with 2 women. So what, did 2 of them stay in one bungalow and then 1 in another? And then how did this all work? It just doesn't make any sense. And by the way, again, where are the photos of the other people? They just aren't there. And if this photo is being taken, even if there were 4 other people there, right? What these photos suggest is that they were, the 6 of them were there, presumably in separate bungalows, but that Diana and Mike snuck off to their own private one or were left alone, which even in and of itself is a bit odd. I mean, especially when you consider where they're at. They're 2 hours away from the hotel that was the work function the previous week, which they then left, and then apparently these 6 people went out to this place. Just very odd. And coincidentally, they both went there, right? Like, and then Mike, and then Vrabel and Russini were just left alone by the rest of them for a whole day. Well, even that is odd, even if that's the truth, which doesn't really add up. So, that gives you an idea of what kind of hotel this is, right? It's very privacy oriented. My guess is a lot of rich people and probably celebrities come here for getaways, for privacy, and for a nice experience. Well, to me, that kind of rules out the hotel worker, because the thing about these privacy hotels is, as far as being a hotel worker goes, these are some of the best jobs. They pay well. You work in a nice environment. And, compared to working at like a different kind of hotel, a more standard hotel, these are better jobs, right? So, and you're working in a very nice place. And I worked in Los Angeles for most of my 20s, so like I also sort of learned this lesson, which is that like these businesses really covet, they are very um serious with their employees about like not having their phones out around rich people. I worked at Erewhon in Los Angeles, which celebrities go to get their groceries at. And one thing it was very like impressed upon us, or like we were told to repeatedly and very seriously, was that like you never have your phone out around these people, that you never give them the impression you're like staring at them. You basically totally respect their privacy. That's part of the gig at these hotels. That's what keeps rich people coming back, is they feel like they have real privacy there, and that the workers are almost part of the furniture, right? That they don't have to worry about them like taking a picture or bothering them. And indeed, if you do that as a worker, you're out like right away, like that. And that's how they keep these workers from doing that, right? Or else you just have photos coming out from these places all the fucking time. And it's not hard for them, if a certain photo is snapped, it's not hard for them to determine, okay, this worker was in this area at that time, he must have been the one that snapped that photo, and they just fire him. And then you lose as an employee that has this cool job where you work in this cool place and you see celebrities and you get paid well comparatively to other hotel workers at other hotels. if you do that, you're risking losing your job, which for most of these employees is enough to keep them from doing that. They play along with the privacy thing. So to me, that's enough for me to determine that the hotel worker thing is a little bit less likely. Remember, here we have two different spouses that could be noticed. It's not just one spouse, right? Like they're both married. So it's double the odds that there's a spouse that's um, catching on, which, if that's tough as a married person to get away with this crap without your spouse realizing anything. Then you add in that Russini over the last number of years makes weird comments about her husband on television, jokingly, but like to some like alluding to some suggestion that like their marriage is not all that strong, which as a husband, maybe that bothers him, right? Maybe he gets fed up with it and decides, like I wonder if when she's gone off on these work trips, she's really doing what she says she's doing. It's a possibility. And then you just have like a very competitive industry in insider reporting. And if Diana Rossini, if someone thinks she's doing something untoward to get her stories, another one of these um, reporters, another one of these insiders, if they think that, what's to stop them from hiring a private investigator and following? If they let's say they heard they were at they were in Phoenix at the NFL work function the week prior, and they picked up on this that like Diana and Mike were gonna head out to this hotel somehow, and they said to themselves, really? Well, why are they doing that? That's odd. That's a very private, romantic hotel. And they just said, you know what? I'm tired of Diana getting these stories because she's banging Mike at the landscape hotel. I'm gonna send a private investigator out there. That's a possibility. To me that makes more sense. Um, the four figures thing is what tells me that it's not likely a hotel worker and it's not likely a random person, because both of those parties, given their circumstances, would want more than just up to $10,000, right? Like, why is that all they would ask for? They would just keep them and wait till someone was willing to pay more. Um, and indeed, there is the report said this report states that like TMZ was considering it, and Page Six eventually jumped on it. So there was multiple sources, multiple of these outlets considering taking these photos. But the fact that they were only requesting a sum in the four figures, that tells me it's not likely a hotel worker, because they would just want to get more. You're risking your job. You would want to get more than that. Like, logic tells you it's not a hotel worker. A random person as well. If you randomly got this opportunity to take these photos and you're going to try to capitalize on this, you would ask for more than up to $10,000. If you're someone staying at that hotel, you're paying like $2,000 a night. You're going to sell the photos for like barely the cost of a few nights at this hotel. It doesn't make any sense. Its logic tells you that that's not the case. So that leaves you with spouse, hiring a PI because they're suspicious, or a fellow colleague in the industry, right, that has a vendetta against Russini because they're sick of her getting the stories the way she does. Now let's consider the idea that the photos were shopped for four figures, so up to $9,999. That to me potentially suggests the reporter more than the spouse, because the spouse, number one, why would if this was a spouse just trying to find out what's going on with their husband or wife, why would they shop these photos to Page Six in the first place? That doesn't really make any sense. And then also, like, I don't know, you're just selling them for like a low figure just to get your wife or husband screwed, and that's ultimately can just, like, what that's going to do is, yeah, it's going to embarrass them, but like it's ultimately just going to affect money that you're probably relying on too, right? Like if they lose their job or Diana can't do reporting anymore, like her husband didn't do himself any favors if he sold these photos to TMZ for four figures. He might be relying on that income too. If anything, his kids are. So it's like that just doesn't really add up. The reporter thing though kind of does, right? Because if you're a reporter that's just trying to tear down Diana Rossini's reputation, then you might be willing to sell these photos for a little less, because you're at least getting the payoff of this story becoming a big story, right? So I think if you just consider this story where the Vrabel Rossini photos were shot for four figures, and you do the math on all that, kind of suggests maybe it was some competitive colleague within her own industry that like had a private investigator follow them because they caught on to what was going on between her and Vrabel. So to me, that's what I would that's what I would lean towards in terms of what happened here. Is it's likely a colleague hired a private investigator to go take the photos, and they were actually able to get something, um, which is just trying to kind of crazy. But if you look at what they were doing, it's very stupid. You know, it's so cavalier, and I think this is just a sort of a stand. I mean, you just look at this hotel. I mean, what are you doing out here? You're both married. It just doesn't make any sense. It's a beautiful place. And look at these bungalows. So, where they're at on one of these rooftops, it's only accessible by that particular bungalow you're in. You're basically in a private little area with that person. So, they're not the Courtyard Marriott here. Oh, we both happen to stay here. What a coincidence. No, it's like this is very planned. And again, it's $2,000 a night. So you intend to be here if you're here. You're not just staying at a random hotel for work that they put you in or something like that. Look at that place. It's very cool. I never really heard of a landscape hotel. It's an interesting thing. Probably more common out west where there's these beautiful vistas and scenic views. Anyways, I think that's about it in terms of what I wanted to touch on here. Oh no, I guess there's a couple other things. So, one thing I think was their big mistake here was making quick statements that are now proving to be having been just fabricated at the time. In the heat of the moment when this story was first breaking, they sort of let their they let their clouded judgment from being under pressure get the best of them, and they made dumb statements. These photos show a completely innocent interaction, and any suggestion otherwise is laughable. They don't deserve any further response. Well, when you say something like that, like, first of all, you're basically telling people they're stupid if they think that these photos, that we've seen, you're basically saying you're stupid if you think that this suggests something, which, people don't take kindly to that, right? Like, they don't want to be told by Mike Vrabel that they're stupid because they think something obvious. That's going to motivate them to dig in further, obviously, right? Like, that mistake has been a part of PR 101 for as long as people have been studying it. I mean, this was just a big mistake coming out with the problem is, there's different schools of thought on PR. Some people think you come out with a strong denial right away, and if Mike was telling his agents or whatever, his PR people, no, this is innocent, right? Like, and maybe the PR people hadn't looked into this very carefully, seen these damning, the damning setup of this hotel, and how, maybe it's all just happening so fast. They just they believed what Mike was telling them, and they said, okay, then we have to come out with a hard denial. Problem is, the way they said it, the way they put it, it's very condescending, and that the internet's gonna go to work on that, right? The internet doesn't take kindly to condescension, especially from rich people. It doesn't. It's going to want to, get back at them and have that blow up in their face. And if there's any crack in the door where they can make that happen, they're gonna push through it, right? So then you have Russini's statement: the photos don't represent the group of 6 people. Oh, see, that's where you hung yourself. Because where are the other people, right? If there was a group of 6 people, it should not be hard to produce, some other photos where you see the other people can identify who they are, and just go talk to those people and ask about the weekend and make sure what they're saying is somewhat true, at least, or it's at least believable. Problem is, you don't have any of the friends in those photos, and to this point, 5 days later, we haven't heard the names of any of these friends. So what that does is, at least in the eyes of the public, even if this is true, it makes it look like a lie, which, you start lying, and now you're supposed to be a reporter. You're supposed to be someone who uncovers truth. So you start just telling huge sweeping lies like this that are easily proven wrong. You've just destroyed your credibility as a reporter. I mean, I don't know how people could argue otherwise. I'm sure she's gonna try to come back to reporting, but I think this kind of does her in. If this does end up proving to be a lie, which, if she can't produce the names of the other people and get it into, unless like right now what they're doing is what Diana and Mike are doing are literally just like concocting a story and then getting other people to play along, which I wouldn't rule it out, just given how shameless these rich and powerful people are. Like I would believe that they're getting two of their friends. They're each going to get two of their friends and telling them, look, you got to tell people you are here. The problem is, it still doesn't hold water because in this day and age, you guys didn't take any photos of the group of you. There's no photos of these people there, actual photo evidence. The other problem is too, is the New York Post has come out with another story, or sort of an addition to this story, in which they they spoke with someone that was at the hotel at the time, just another patron, who confirmed that. Okay, here it is. But 3 other eyewitnesses told us they did not see anyone else with Vrabel. Asked if the Pats coach visited the hotel with a group of friends, one eyewitness said no, he was with a girl. So instead of having friends that were supposed to be there of them come out and say, yeah, we were there, you have actual people that were there saying no, he was with a girl. So, I think one of their big mistakes here, and if they have PR people, those PR people need to be fired because you have failed at your job. Just already. It's already over. You failed. They need to be fired. And you need to get new PR people, because if they signed off on you making these statements, just producing quick, not even like creatively fabricated lies, that's PR. I mean, that is PR, and that's a huge PR failure, and Diana's gonna pay the price for that, right? Like, for terrible PR. I mean, even though she's paying the price for her own actions, right? But the way this has been handled, that this was, the PR people are the ones that sign off on these statements, right? Like, I doubt Diana Russini just went outside of her PR person and was just like, I'm just gonna make this statement because I just want to. So, that was a big mistake. And then, lastly, just kind of interestingly, it surprises me that they're PR people, or that they didn't think, just, let's just say this is AI generated. Like, doesn't that seem like the easiest excuse in this day and age, to just say these? I mean, look at these photos; they're not that great. I mean, someone could I would believe, if they just said it's all AI generated. Like, this AI could easily generate this photo and make it look believable. Same with this one, and same with, I mean, look at the face; it almost looks like AI slop, right? So they could easily just claim that, just say it's all bullshit. I mean, look at this; could easily look kind of AI generated. Yeah, it's what I would have done if I were them. Just completely deny, say you weren't even there, say it was AI generated. And at least you obfuscate, right? Like, you're just like creating a little bit of doubt, and that people might say like, well, maybe it is. There's a lot of AI generation these days. It's just the perfect little fallback to just like deny and cast a little bit of doubt on it. And it just surprises me that that strategy wasn't employed if you're truly just gonna lie. But then again, the problem is that Russini and Vrabel were probably lying to their PR people. So the PR people are just trying to formulate a strategy around lies. So, we'll keep track of any developments, and maybe talk more about it if some more interesting things happen.